In 2011, I was in Afghanistan and decided to do something special for 4th of July. So I grabbed my camera and a copy of the Declaration of Independence and started to film folks serving with me as they read it. The declaration you're about to hear and see was read by sailors, soldiers, airmen, and Marines, and a U.S. citizen working in Bagram, Afghanistan. I was honored to have the general in charge of our forces read the final line. Now, I'm not a history scholar, but as you can imagine, after reading it, printing it, and hearing it hundreds of times, I've learned quite a lot about it. You can basically break this reading down into 5 sections. The first sentence of the Declaration states that as a matter of natural law, we the people can assume political independence, and acknowledges that the grounds for such independence must be reasonable. The second section, the famous preamble, includes the ideas and ideals that were principles of the Declaration. It speaks of the right of revolution, that people have certain rights, and when a government violates them, the people have the right to alter or abolish that government. The third section is a laundry list of charges against King George III, which aim to demonstrate that he has violated the colonists' rights and is therefore unfit to be their ruler. The fourth section represents disappointment that attempts to convince the king to relax his policies towards the colonies had been unsuccessful. The final section, which gives me chills, states that there exist conditions under which people must change their government. The British have produced such conditions, therefore the colonies must cut political ties with the British Crown and become independent states. Thank you to all who have served and sacrificed. May God bless you and your families, and may God bless America. And now, the Declaration of Independence.
When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people
to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another,
and to assume among the powers of the earth a separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them.
A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights.
That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just
powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it.
And to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such ways.
As to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes.
And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed.
But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism,
it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security.
Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government.
The history of the present King of Great Britain is the history of repeated injuries and usurpation, all having a direct object:
the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let the facts submit to a candid world.
He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for the opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people.
He has refused his assent to the laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation, till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them.
He has refused to pass other laws for accommodation of large districts of people unless those people will relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only.
He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures.
He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise.
The state remaining in the meantime, exposed to all the dangers of invasion
without and convulsions within.
He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of land.
He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary power.
He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies not the consent of our legislatures. He has effected to render military independent of superior to the civil power.
He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of his offices and the amount and payment of their salaries.
He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving us his assent to their acts of pretended legislation.
For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by mock trial, for punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states.
For cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury.
For transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. For abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province.
Establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies.
For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government. For suspecting our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever.
He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas and ravished our coasts, burnt our towns and destroyed the lives of our people.
He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death.
Desolation and tyranny already begun, with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely parallel at the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation.
He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive of the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands.
He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of the frontiers the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions.
In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms.
Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people.
Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren.
We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us.
We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here.
We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations,
which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to our voice of justice and our consanguinity.
We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends.
We, therefore, the representative of the United States of America,
in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, due in the name
and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be free and independent states.
That they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connections between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved.
and that as free and independent states they had the full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do.
And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Happy 4th of July, everybody.